So let's talk about things. I think with us being different, we show a lot of things. Like back when you were growing up, they didn't have a lot of the stuff that they have now.
No.
So you just, I assume, button t-shirt or button a shirt just like anyone else, so to speak, but one-handed.
Mm-hmm.
Hence,
What is that? I've never even seen that.
it is a button tool. And
Oh,
this is
interesting.
the sweetest thing
Huh.
on the market. In the sense, you take and just put it through the hole,
Oh, I get it.
put it on the button, and
Oh,
just pull.
very interesting.
And
Didn't even know those things existed.
oh, yeah.
Pretty neat.
For me, I mean, yeah, I can do it. But again, I got to get it out of my head, the loss of
Yeah.
how easy it was before, and do it.
And then I would imagine you just use one hand to unbutton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I do.
Unbutton's a piece of cake.
Yeah. I just push it in. I don't know. That's the way I do it. Like there's that, and then
Well, let me ask this. Growing up, did you ever wear the 501s?
oh yeah. Yeah. Those were the most popular when I was growing up.
Oh, yeah. The biggest pain in the butt, were they not?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I just did it, you know.
Yeah. And yeah, that's just our differences. And
Yeah.
last night I was talking to an individual that you might have met last year. Her struggles. She was having a very bad day, and in the afternoon sent me a text and said, "Hey, you got time to talk?" And that's in our world, the trauma is a big thing, and hers was a horse accident with a rope, and because of the trauma, she deals with a lot of PTSD. And she was just out walking her dogs, and her hand, the leash was wrapped around her good hand, and it just something set a trigger, and she just it's weird. I saw a movie, I want to say it's called Stronger. It's on Netflix. It's about Boston Marathon bombing. And a very good movie. And in one scene in it, I mean, this individual, he's the hometown hero, losing 2 legs in the process and stuff of the bombing because he was right next to the bomb. But they had they wanted him to come out on the ice at a Bruins game and wave flag and stuff. And this is real early after his accident and stuff, kind of the first time he had been in with crowds. And he gets out there on the ice, and all the people in the stands, cheering and everything, just all that loud noise just triggered him. And, he turns to his girlfriend, "Get me out of here now."
Yeah.
And it's
I can see that.
so weird how that is.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk cutting food. How do you cut your steaks?
Well, it really depends if I'm with friends or someone I know, if that makes sense, someone I know real well. Because if I know somebody real well, let's say my wife, especially if we're at home, I don't generally do this when I'm out and about. But I'll be honest with you, I'll just boom, I'll put my stump right there and just boom, just start cutting. Now, if I'm out and about with vendors, you know, I've worked in corporate America for 30 years, so definitely some really nice restaurants and dinners I had the pleasure and opportunity to go to. I will put the I will put a knife underneath my stump like this, boom, and hold it like that. I'm going to be honest with you, 50% of the time it falls either way. You know what I mean? So one of the tricks though that I did learn, I don't know if you're ready to say something, so I apologize if I cut you off, but I don't get, I'll get a fillet. You know, I will get the most tender cut of meat because that gives me the opportunity to use my fork more than anything else. I'll do some like bigger cuts and I'll try to hold the knife this way. And then once I have some bigger cuts, well, then I can use my fork to make the smaller cuts where I'm able to eat. I don't know if that's a trick, but that's how I do it.
Oh, okay, so here's my world. Again, I got to retrain my brain in everything. So until I started following you and talking about things, I always would try to hold, if I didn't have my prosthetic, naturally try and hold it like I had for 50 something years and stuff. And that was next to impossible, basically. It was a big challenge, totally. And then whoever I was with, there were times that I'd ask them to cut things up for me. But then with my prosthetic on, it's a piece of cake. It goes back. But then the other morning, I was sitting there as I was thinking about our discussion and stuff. I was eating ham and eggs and hash browns, and I was sitting there. I could cut the ham up just fine and, you know, just poke it and put it in my mouth. Everything's good. And, okay, let me qualify. I hold the fork with my prosthetic and cut with my good hand. So then we come to the eggs and I go to scoop them up onto the fork that way. And with my limited range of motion and everything, it's a challenge. It's a big challenge.
Yeah.
So in my world, at that point in time, I switch hands and eat the eggs with the other hand. And so I'm doing this song and dance through my whole meal. You know, sometimes I'm cutting and eating with my right hand, and other times I'm eating with my left hand.
That's interesting because a lot of people can't do it with either side. That's for sure. And you know, shout out to Point Designs. I know that's your prosthetic, and I actually saw you in a video cutting carrots, and you use both hands to do that. I thought that was using the prosthetic, and I thought that was an amazing video.
Yeah, and that's just it. People without challenges, majority of individuals, because of our being somewhat small, and most people's eyes, because of size, don't realize the challenges that are out there. And, you know, it kind of leads me watching some of your videos and stuff. Us individuals that have lost through a traumatic accident, majority of time, struggle with pain. And then you got this video out there of the big delivery box to the front step. And you take your stump and poke it right through. And every one of us with a trauma, we're just looking at that crying, going, there's no way, Jose, that we're doing that.
You know, it's interesting about that particular video. I got the package that day, and I had to flip the package around because I did it like I normally do. Just that's the way I've done it for my whole life. So you know what? I think I'll record this. And I worked at Walgreens for a very long time, and you get a big box of whatever it is. As long as it wasn't breakable, then I'd punch a hole in it, and use it as a handle. And that's basically what I've always been able to do. I really don't have any feeling in this, and I know that's a big difference between someone like you who went through a traumatic experience and someone like me who was born that way.
Okay, so to what level is your limited feeling? Just, right on the end, or?
Yeah, right here. Like I could still. This is basically if I'm going to drive a nail in, and I know that sounds kind of funny, but I'm going to use this area right here. I could feel here, and I can feel here, but right here I really can't feel. And when it gets cold, and this might be something you suffer from as well, the circulation, especially for congenital, could be very poor. So it gets cold, and this will turn purple, and I can't move it, and it'll ache, and that's where some of my struggles come in when it's and as you can see, it moves, and here, I'll just show you an example, and I will stand up for this. This is the way that I hold a coffee mug, and I'm able to move it and do whatever. I could drink out of it if I want, but when it gets cold, I can't do that because it's not movable any longer. So just something that we're all unique, and that's unique to me.
Well, that's very interesting because, again, most of us traumas suffered the same thing. And I hadn't thought about that on your end being congenital. I thought, especially in the fact that they say over time your body heals itself. So it takes and will regenerate or, make changes to your circular system.
Mm-hmm.
And, just like in my case, I know without a shadow of doubt that my surgeon, even though I was in surgery for like 5 hours.
Wow.
That night, he wasn't sitting there stitching up every little single vein and stuff, putting the ends back together and stuff. He got the big ones, the important ones, and left the rest. But again, I deal with the same aspects. Temperature affects mine big time. And so many people tell me I need to move south.
Hey, if you don't want to, you live your best life. That's the way I look at
it. Yeah. But so one of my adaptations is I have a pair of heated mittens.
Mm-hmm.
And, the funny thing, those things are with me basically 365 days a year. And that's one of my coping mechanisms for my pain. Mm-hmm. Like I went to PT on Tuesday and my OT worked my hand over big time. And I walked out of there and I don't know, she broke something loose or what, but my hand was hurting big time. And the first thing I do is turn on the mitten and stick my hand in there and just let the heat kind of relax things.
Yeah,
and then, if that doesn't curb it, then I go to aspirin and stuff and just slowly work up till I find what eases that pain.
Yep, that makes sense. And I don't have pain. That's one thing I'll say. I mean, it does, when it turns purple, it gets slower. I'm not going to be able to necessarily hit like I can, but not really pain. I do get itches there that I can't scratch, but that's really about it.
Okay. So do you feel fingers at all?
No. Okay. This feels, the best way to explain it, this feels natural. It wouldn't feel natural if I had hand. I don't know. This feels like this is the way a human body should be. And I know it's not, but that's the way it feels to me.
But your body's compensated.
Like, yeah, well, it's never had it, so.
yeah, in my case, we have a center line for balance purposes and stuff. And okay, I lost, you know, I don't know, a pound in weight, maybe. That's just a rough guess, but it has thrown that center line of balance off just a little bit. And at certain times, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of unstable. I'm not walking that I-beam 50 stories up today.
Wow.
Like,
Wow. Well, good luck with that.
yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, to your point, I guess maybe that's something my body didn't have to adjust to because it never had to, but certainly my left side is much heavier than my right side because I got basically atrophy. The whole side hasn't, the difference in size of my left and right is pretty big, pretty noticeable.
Okay, so let's talk about that and you weigh it into our overuse issues and stuff. I'm going to PT now because of overuse compensation, and she points out, the changes in my muscle mass from one side to the other, clear up into my shoulders, my traps, and everything. Have you done any PT?
Yeah, I have, because I have had overuse injuries to my wrist and to my elbow, and I've had shoulder surgery as well. Right now, I work out, and I changed my workouts from doing like supination curls and tricep kickbacks, anything with dumb weights or dumbbells. Pardon me. I've changed. I changed this week because it was putting a strain on my elbow. My elbow was just not getting any better because just to live my life, I have to use my left elbow quite a bit. So now I'm just doing core exercises because I'm just like, I'm going to put those down for a while. Let's give it a rest. And I got to be honest, it actually feels pretty good. And I'll admit there's definitely some ibuprofen involved and Voltaren and whatever else I can get my hand on. But I'm just going to hold off on doing my dumbbell exercises for a week or two, maybe longer, to give this side of my body a rest because it's doing mostly everything anyway.
Okay, here's a thought though. Go to band workouts and increase rep numbers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately I had a band, but it snapped, so I need to get a new one. I just haven't done that yet. I think that's a great idea.
Again, you're not going heavy. Getting range of motion and stuff, and just increase the number of reps because same thing. So kind of the cycle for me has been, I lose my fingers, and at that point, I got to prove to myself what I can still do. So I start working out heavier than normal and just pushing through, and I'm having overuse issues and stuff. So I'm stepping back, and my focus now is more mobility stuff and lighter band type things where, again, range of motion, just increase the number of reps and stuff to cycle down.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So what was it like growing up?
For me, it was fine. I never really had any issues. And one of the things I do want to say, though, is I've met certainly a lot of people that grew up exactly like me. I met a young lady at a support group here in town. I'm in Arizona, Phoenix area. And she grew up really the mirror version of me. And there was a story where someone in the support group, and it was the wife of someone who lost his leg in a motorcycle accident. And they were probably a little older than us at the time. And she looked at that young lady and says, well, you really don't know what it's like since you're a congenital to go through an amputation and the trauma that ensues. And I was really proud of that young lady to say, well, I'll tell you what I do know. I do know about getting bullied all through my life and how traumatic that was for me for the 35 years I've been alive, as opposed to the 2 or 3 years that this gentleman had lost his leg. So I think it's all in perspective for me. Again, I never did, because I like having one hand, and if people wanted to make fun of me, which they did, I didn't care. But I will say this, and I was able to share this at an event, your event that I was honored to be at about a month and a half ago up in, how do you say your town in Utah?
Way.
I'm sorry, say
Utah
that.
is Mantua.
Oh, beautiful town. It was stunningly gorgeous. But the first thing that happened in my family when I was born was the doctor came in and asked my mom and dad if they wanted to put me up for adoption because of the way I was born. And that's just an interesting perspective to, there's nothing wrong with adoption, obviously. I'm a big proponent of it when it's necessary or when it's needed. But for that to happen, and for my mom to be asked that question minutes after giving birth to me, it really, that's just part of growing up like I did. And it's, they were very strong people, and I thank them every day for having parents as strong as they were.
Yes. I mean, and I want to say partly goes back to the way the world has changed through the dawn of time and stuff. And as we were growing up in the same era and stuff, that was kind of the frame of mind. I think it still is. It's getting better, but anybody with a physical appearance challenge was put off in the closet, the corner.
Oh yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
To make, sadly, everyone else feel better about things and stuff. And, that's what drives my passion in trying to bring awareness to challenges and stuff. And I speak a lot of times about size because it is a big thing. Mm-hmm. Growing up within our animal instinct DNA. You go to the animals and stuff, it's the big bull elk that has the harem of cows and stuff, bigger, stronger, faster, and everything. So many times people make judgments that, a leg is so much bigger, worse than a hand and stuff, where, not wanting to do a comparison because any limb loss is a challenge.
I agree with that 100%. I agree with that 100%. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And
it's challenge.
Not taking anything away from congenital to trauma, but, within our minds and makeup, us with the traumas are dealing with the loss. And in my case, it's been a journey. I've had 9 surgeries to my hand over 7 years now. And 2 of those surgeries have been revisions where they have taken things away. And so, my very first revision, and both of those have been by choice for me. I knew it needed to go away and stuff. And my first revision, I met with my doctor. We set the date, which was 2 weeks down the road. And for 2 weeks, that was a very emotional 2 weeks for me because, again, here I was giving up a part of my body.
Yeah.
And, at the time of the accident, it was a split second. There was no choice, no thought about it. I was fight or flight trying to save myself. But then, when I came for the second revision and I knew what I had gained on the first revision, it was okay, set the date and let's get this over with so I can get on living life.
Yeah, it makes sense. Tough stuff.
Yeah. So what was dating like growing up?
I like to think I didn't have any problems. I'm sure there's some people that didn't want to date me because of how I am, but if those people felt that way about someone who is a little different than them, then maybe I didn't want to date them either. I just never had an issue with it. I dated quite a bit, had a good time, maybe too good of a time, depending on how you look back on things. As an older gentleman now, but I never really had any problems. Again, was I shot down? Sure, but everyone is. Everyone gets shot down. So I never looked at that or anything, any reason I got shot down because if you want to start talking about like work opportunities, that definitely was something that I got shot down on quite a bit and just blatantly discriminated against because I had one hand growing up. But again, if an organization or company is not going to hire me because I have one hand, I probably am not going to want to work with them because that's their philosophy. So that's kind of the way I've looked at it, even in dating and friendship and all that.
Yeah. So let's, on the flip, again, my side of things, at the time of my accident, I had just entered a marriage. And a few years later, that marriage broke up. And I'm back in the dating scene and stuff, of which, technology has its cool points and bad points and stuff. There's the apps out there and everything. And it's been a struggle and an adjustment as to, okay, at what point in time do I discuss this elephant in the room? And, again, this is all of my life since the accident, in the sense of, again, dealing with the loss of things, trying to fight the being less because of that loss. But, early on, I posted all the pictures of everything I do and everything, and we'd go to meet, and all of a sudden I get that deer in the headlight look. Oh, you never said anything here.
Yeah.
So then switched it up, changed things around, and talk about it openly up front. And all of a sudden, there's no one that wants to talk to me.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which is also, I was talking to an individual that went through a trauma just this last year, and she was in a long-term relationship at the time of her accident. And day number 3, he said, "I've had enough," and left.
Wow.
While she was still in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, it's very tough. It's very, very tough. You can't fault the individuals. No. But in the same sense, when you're going through something so traumatic and then all of a sudden someone drop kicks you while you're down, as you will, it just anchors it in that much more.
Well, I'll tell you what, you having this conversation today may open the doors, because to your point, that person, it's hard to, I don't want to say it's hard to blame them. That's certainly, I think the way you said it, kicking them while they're down, is exactly right. That I wouldn't be proponent of that. But there's a lot of the unknown from the perspective of another person, including me growing up. You know, my wife, I've been married 28 years, and she never made it an issue, but I'm sure there were some unknowns for her. But being able to have this conversation now, and that you're facilitating, and I thank you for it, will help other people understand that, yeah, we're just normal people. Everyone has their challenges, and we're no different. And I think that's a positive thing that you're doing.
Yeah, and that's part of this whole discussion. It's like I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of my favorite podcaster is an individual by the name of Ed Milet. Very prominent. It's worth a lot of money out there and stuff. And he openly discusses, here's this guy that has hundreds of millions of dollars. And, you know, but he grew up in an alcoholic family. He played college baseball for a period of time until he got hurt. And he openly talks about his triumphs and his disappointments.
Sure.
And, you know, even today, when he has, you know, all the money in the world, so to speak, he still has those same struggles as everyone else. We all have struggles. They're just a little bit different than everyone else.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, one story I want to tell that it kind of reminded me of what you're talking about. My wife and I met someone through the purchase of a house for my daughter, and we decided, hey, let's four of us get together. You get your husband, and us two will go out, and we had a great time. We're good friends now, but when we first met, everything was, to me, it was, you know, hey, how you doing? Good to meet you. You know, I'm missing a right hand, so shaking is always kind of a fun thing. You kind of, you know, I always turn it around. But he later told me that he after they were like on their way home from our first dinner, he's like, why didn't you tell me that guy had one hand? You could have prepared me. It's like, it's funny, you know. I don't think of those things, but obviously others do, and that would be something that maybe would be equivalent to your dating story. And hey, you know, little heads up would be nice. I don't know. We're all good friends now, and it's funny. We laugh.
Oh yeah, and you know, on the flip side, because I have a partial hand, and going around the world talking to people and stuff, you're always out shaking hands.
Yeah,
you have no options, so to speak. And well, with COVID, you could do bumps.
Yeah, the fist bump, one of my favorite things. I got the ready-made fist. If someone wants to fist bump me.
There might be a boxing story in there.
That's funny.
But yeah, you know, I meet individuals that have not known my story or anything. And there are so many deer in the headlight looks I've had over the last 7 years.
Sure.
Whether I have a prosthetic on or not. And I'm very open and just go natural, right to right. And they all of a sudden, it's like, okay, what do I do? If I don't have prosthetic on, they're trying to figure out how to shake. Yeah. And it's just grab it. I'll make it.
We'll make it work. Exactly. And you hit upon something that reminded me of me growing up and, you know, being 4 or 5, whatever age I was, and all the people that would stare and point, and all the adults that would do that, and my mom would always just, or my mom and dad would always be like, you have a question, you can ask us. You don't have to stare, point, and whisper, and, you know, ignore my boy. That's not how we want to raise him. So that was something I did grow up with. It just kind of triggered a memory for me.
Oh, well, yeah, and that is in my discussions and stuff with individuals. I tell them the same thing, but again, on the traumatic accident side of things, we're all different. We're all in different position. If they have accepted their accident and stuff, whatever it be, they'll be open for discussion. typically what I see is if they are still in a denial type state of things, then they are sitting there with the chip on their shoulder and just leave me alone and don't want anything to do with anybody. So, you know, you can't fault people,
No.
but you know, we're all in a different position.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I agree with you 100%. If that's where they're at in their journey, I think it's worth, I shouldn't say it's worth it. You need to respect it. I'd have no problem if someone didn't want to talk to me about whatever they went through. Understandable. I get it. I understand. I have no problem with that. So yeah, to your point, we're all going through our own journey, and allow us to navigate that journey as we see best for ourselves.
Yeah, and that's to my all the peer visits I do to amputees and stuff. They are all in different phases. We go through different phases. We go through a series of five or six different phases and stuff, and they don't necessarily all go in the same order and stuff. Everyone's different. Like me, my phase was instantly after I started to recover just slightly. I was in the gym 4 weeks after my accident.
Wow.
I had to get out and figure out what I could still do.
Sure.
Where probably the majority are in that hiding denial phase for stuff. And I was mixed because I was in denial a little bit. And I tell this story. I have a very dear friend, and, you know, this is my badge of honor now, in the fact of I got some wicked scars.
Yes, you do.
So you got to watch out for those doctors. They're brutal on you. But, you know, yeah, I was at the gym and it was an exercise bike. You know, I just hopped on it and
you're doing something.
Yeah, and pedal. But I was very guarded at that period of time. My hand was still wrapped up. I had all this protective stuff. It was in a sling, and I was in that denial. My scars were ugly, and I was protecting what I thought was very ugly from everyone else's view and stuff. And I'd been at the gym for a couple of weeks, and this friend of mine comes up to me one day and she goes, "Do you mind showing me?" And I looked at her and I kind of made the sarcastic off the cuff statement that, you know, I hope it doesn't gross you out or something to those effect. And I take and I unwrap it and I show it to her. And she looked at it very intently for a period of time. And then this always gets me a little bit. Yeah. Because she looked me in the eyes. And at that point in time, she goes, "You know, it doesn't look as bad as I thought it would."
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
And at that point, that ripped down the wall, the curtains, whatever you want to describe it as, that I had been building to protect you from seeing what I thought was very gross and ugly.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the transition at that point. Okay, I'm over this now. I can get out. I can show you what is going on and stuff.
Yes. Yeah, that was very kind of her, or I'm sure she was telling the truth, but it was a good timing for you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And, again, society in general needs to have a little more empathy towards everyone's struggle. I think people with challenges, they still struggle, and they still might have a chip on their shoulder, like that story you told about the individual losing a leg and stuff. And oh, it's not as, you have no clue because you grew up that way.
What was interesting, it was his wife that said that, which was really, it's like a complete third party. And I guess she was protecting her husband to a certain extent, I would imagine. But I couldn't imagine saying that to anyone, regardless of how they got into the situation. That's not that's not just not an appropriate statement. Dismissing someone else's journey because of your own.
Exactly. And with that, and my discussions and talks and getting out, speaking with individuals, I've started developing, call it now what, learning things, putting ourselves in other people's shoes.
Yeah, it's like empathy.
Being my own shoes.
Sure.
And stuff, of which I have developed, if I had like a corporate type speaking, I have this challenge statement, and I take and have the individuals on their writing dominant hand take and tape up their 3 fingers so they are kind of put in a position where they can't use them. And then they have to pick up with their residual 2 fingers a pencil. And then I have a paragraph that they got to take and write out that paragraph.
But they struggle.
It really
can't do it.
And it's a very challenging statement. And it's not just, Dick and Jane and the puppy type story. No, there's specific words in there describing what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how at the end of it, they can take the tape off and go back and live their life as normal. Yeah. Where us individuals that have limb loss or limb difference don't have that option. This is our life.
Yes.
And that is just to bring about the awareness as to what things are like.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that is the biggest struggle, I think, for individuals that have no challenges. I think it's not that big of a deal. You just deal with it, and it's just like it's easy peasy.
I think that's where someone like you really has it a lot different than even someone like me. You mentioned maybe somebody that's missing a leg. I mean, finger amputees, I think, get that rap, and sometimes self-described as, well, I'm just missing a few fingers. If you're missing a few fingers, you are part of this community, and that is not an easy thing. It's not as easy as people believe it to be, and I think that's where people like you really probably get the struggle a little bit more than even maybe somebody like me. Like I said, people just assume, just a couple fingers. No, a couple fingers is huge, and it's very difficult.
And that's just it. Again, going back to size, thought, brain imaging and stuff. People don't realize your fingers are your most used limb on your body. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, you are using. You know, if you counted your finger activity to step counter, I'm just throwing, because I haven't ever sat down, but what is it? 50 times to 1?
Yeah.
You know, you're sitting there typing.
Yes.
You know, you're secretary or whatever, and you're sitting there typing all these letters and stuff. And before my accident, I could touch type. And so now I'm not that case. And in my realm, I split the keyboard up about 2/3, 3/4 of it are handled by my left hand. And then with my 2 residual fingers on the right, I pick up the rest of that keyboard and stuff.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
And, you know, it is kind of interesting in our, call it age group. I work with the individuals that, you know, computers weren't around when we were growing up, so to speak, for the most part. You know, they came. So I work with a lot of industrial individuals and stuff that don't have typing skills. And it's funny, there are some individuals that even with my challenge, I can keep up or beat them.
I bet.
One of those, okay.
I'm an okay typer. I don't claim to be a great typer, but I can type as quick as I feel I need to.
Yeah, but then again, you have to use the whole keyboard. And
no, I use it. I hit enter this way. Boom, the enter key on the end. Then I'll use shift key. Yeah, that's about it. I probably just shift, maybe backspace. I don't know.
So you like Control Alt Delete.
Yes. Well, yeah.
I with stomp and then Alt and Delete.
Yeah. I Control Alt and then I hit Delete with this. I got to make sure I don't hit it too hard. I'll break the whole keyboard. I'll go right through it.
Oh, yes. You know, and again, those are some of the struggles through life and life's a journey.
Yeah.
That is one thing that has been mentioned in several books I've been reading as of late, some podcasts and stuff. Everyone looks at, oh, I just want this day over, this week over. The relationship, when I get to this point, will be so much better. I'll be so much better when I achieve this and stuff. But by reframing things back to life as a journey and a never-ending journey,
yeah,
it makes life better in that sense, where you're not so much up and down with things, that you just kind of stay more even keeled and just go with life.
Yeah.
With the ups and downs. They're just little slight ripples.
Absolutely.
So, what other things would you like to discuss?
I just think it was interesting, talking. It's made me reflect, on growing up and some of the things I may have forgotten. So, the staring, I hadn't thought about that in a while, but that's fine. Again, people still stare. I mean, they do that to this day. So I don't mind that. I'm a little bit of a ham. So if they want to stare, I'll be, I'll put on a show for them, Uh, Nothing else I could think of. I think for me, what I've learned in talking to a lot of people like you and others is there is another side, meaning that, hey, especially with a traumatic or a medical condition where suddenly you lose some, unfortunately, may have to have an amputation. It's a journey, and the journey starts. And you said it's maybe a 6-step approach, but there is another side, and there seems to be happiness on that other side. It may not be tomorrow, but it's there for the taking if you allow it. And that's probably something I've learned, not from myself, but from others.
Exactly. That is such a well said statement, that we have to allow it. I throughout my life, I've tried to let things roll off as much as possible. We're all human. We make mistakes. We have struggles and everything. But the more we let things roll off, the easier our life is. When we start thinking of our losses and my realm and stuff, that's when things start getting harder. The struggles are more,
Yeah.
they're more in depth and stuff. And I love watching your comedy.
Oh, thank you.
We have to laugh at ourselves at some point in time and stuff. And I just finished this book. It's called, I want to say, How to Love, and it's love with a space, then D. So it's both versions on how to be loved and how to love.
Interesting.
And that is one point. It's a very good book because it's just, you can open it up at any point and just start reading. And you don't have to start at the beginning and go to the end. It's just the statements that make you sit back and just go, yeah, maybe I need to change that. Maybe I need to reframe that. And that was one of the things. We need to laugh more and accept our challenges and stuff as being more human. We all make mistakes, but just because someone doesn't like us or is critical of us or whatever, that's on them.
Yeah.
And not on us.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And basically, another statement, we're kind of right at our 1-year anniversary. I haven't looked date for sure, but this next week is the coalition.
Yeah.
And that's where we met last year.
Yeah, I met because you had an excellent breakout session about how fingers are looked at as cosmetic items. I don't want to steal your thunder. I learned a lot that day, and that's where I first realized that finger amputees are probably they're not given enough love, and maybe even from themselves at times. And you're part of the community, and you need support just like everyone else.
And that's just it. Just throwing numbers out in educating on upper limb loss, finger partial hands are 95%,
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
which, you know, in your case, you're right on the cusp, but you're kind of bouncing in that you've lost your whole, basically. So you probably fall in that 5%, which, you know, probably being congenital is 1% or something like that.
Yeah.
And not taking anything away, but again, 95%, and I call us the lost kids.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're also the most denied prosthetic ones.
Yeah. It's terrible. To be honest, it's terrible.
It honestly is. And that's why my passion is trying to educate the world as to the challenges and stuff. And I want to.
You educated me, and that was eye-opening for me. So I appreciate what you do and you continue to do with your voice. You're making a difference.
Yeah. I thank you for all that you've done in spreading the word and stuff, your comedy, everything there. I love our talks together, whether we are doing it on a podcast, a Zoom, or any of these, even when, you know, we just sit down and do a phone call and talk to people, to each other and stuff, because you open my eyes, I open your eyes, and, you know, that's what life's all about. And with that being said, thank you for talking again today, and we will be talking again soon.
It's always a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate you asking me to have this conversation. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Mike. We'll talk to you later.